Chapter 27. Cara. Cara couldn't believe she was tailing Bruce. This was bound to be a bad idea. Every fiber of her being screamed out that she should have taken Cole with her, or that she should call Jordan. But tell them what? Perhaps the man was just going for coffee, or to grab something from the store. She would call them as soon as she knew for sure. Bruce pulled into the parking lot of a large warehouse. Cara wasn't immediately familiar with the building, but she knew following him into the lot would give her away. She drove slowly past the entrance and pulled into a building across the street. Turning off her car, she watched as Bruce got out of his car, looked around, and then headed into the building. This was no coffee shop, but what was this building? Craning her neck, she scanned the building for any signs that would allow her to see what it was, but there was nothing. It was large, bare, and... The knock at her window sent her heart thundering in her chest, but before she could react, the door opened and Malone's face appeared. "Cara, so happy you could stop by. Why don't you join me?" Cara bit her lip as she quickly considered her options. She could reach for her phone, but Malone would get her before she could dial 911. It would be better to leave it in the car and hope someone pinged her cell when they realized she was missing. Surely Cole or Makenna would come looking for her soon. The knife she always kept strapped to her ankle was there, but she didn't want to give it away yet. She needed to be sure Malone was an enemy before she attacked him. Otherwise, she would be spending time in prison, which was definitely not her goal. No, better to just go with him and let it play out. "Sure, Malone, but I wasn't expecting to see you here." She flashed up what she hoped was a confident smile before stepping out of the car to join him. "Really? You followed my bodyguard here? I can't imagine you didn't think I'd be nearby." Though he still looked the same, there was an unnatural edge to his voice that Cara had never heard before. He withdrew a gun and motioned for her to walk toward the warehouse. Her mouth dried up as she began the walk she was fairly certain would lead to her death. Why did you take Bruce here? 1,000 scenarios ran through her mind, none of them good, but she wanted to hear it from Malone's mouth. "I bring Bruce everywhere. He's quite handy to have around for protection and to clean up messes." "You mean messes like David?" She paused and glanced his direction. A momentary look of ire flashed across his face before he composed himself again. "David was incompetent. He was supposed to secure the research and the samples and tie up the loose ends, but he failed miserably." "Loose ends, like Steve and myself?" Though she was still guessing, the pieces were beginning to fall into place for Cara, and they were not painting a happy future. The barrel of the gun poked her back. "Neither of you were supposed to survive. But David didn't have the courage to finish the job. While he got the research and the samples, Steve called me as soon as he came to, and I had to finish the job. Bruce was supposed to make sure you were taken care of, but the arrival of your friends interrupted his mission." "Didn't have the stomach to finish me yourself?" Cara shot at him. Feelings of anger and betrayal simmered beneath her skin. Malone shrugged. "I always had a soft spot for you. I could have done it, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it." "And you enjoyed killing Steve? We trusted you. Why would you kill him?" "Money, Cara. I needed money." "Money?" She nearly choked on the word. Steve had been killed for money? They reached the door of the warehouse, and Malone pulled it open. "High school is expensive, Cara. Caleb is playing football, which is several $1,000s, and Brianna does gymnastics, and now cheer. You know how little the military pays. I needed money to afford life. Some very interested buyers found out about our research and offered a nice sum of money in return for access to the virus." "Terrorists, you mean?" What if they unleash it on the U.S.? The door opened to a dimly lit hallway, and Cara struggled to see in front of her. That's why I had to wait until you were close to a vaccine. Well, I guess a cure in this case. Steve probably would have told you at your meeting, but he had just discovered the day before what you three did this afternoon. One vaccine won't work, but 3 different treatments will. Now that we have that information, I can relax and deliver the goods to my buyers. Do you even have any left? Didn't David use it all to infect the pool and the garden? You think David did that? A dark laugh billowed out of Malone's throat. We poisoned the pool and then injected David directly. Once his fever spiked, then we gave him the watering can and dropped him off at the church. Cara stopped once again and turned to Malone. Then why kill him in the hospital? Malone shook his head. Because I know how good you are. When you called and told me you knew who he was, I knew you would have already put him on medication. I couldn't take the chance he would wake up and tell you anything. It was a shame to lose Charles, but I couldn't send Bruce in case the cops were called. He poked her again with the gun. Walk. The whole picture was now clear for Cara, all but one question. How did David get involved in all of this anyhow? He came to me a year ago asking for a job. I'm sure you know his sister has cancer, and he couldn't afford treatments. He was supposed to just report to me what the 2 of you were discovering, but he got antsy, and I had to get rid of him. Fortunately for him, he had excellent computer skills. The computers at the base were impenetrable, but he assured me he could hack into your private servers if I could get the 2 of you off base. Cara felt sick to her stomach. How had Malone fooled her so easily? Perhaps she had been distracted by her breakup with Stan. No, if she was honest, she knew she hadn't been at the top of her game since she'd met Stan. That was evidenced by the fact that she had let him abuse her for so long. The hallway opened to a large room where several men stood around talking. Bruce turned as they approached and flashed a large smile. I told you she wouldn't be able to resist following me, boss. He picked up a rope from a table as he walked their direction. You did well, Bruce. This will certainly be easier to explain than killing her in her bed and breakfast. Malone shoved her into a chair, and Cara immediately felt rope burn into the sensitive skin of her wrist. She prayed Bruce would not feel the knife when he tied up her ankles. Suddenly, Malone's face was in front of hers. Now, I have a question for you, Miss Hunter. What tipped you off? Again, Cara ran through her options. He obviously didn't know about the cufflink, and telling him might make him speed up whatever his plan was. So she kept that information to herself. Instead, she shrugged. A lot of things, actually, but mostly the fact that you knew where Steve and I were, and missing the meeting an hour ago seemed uncharacteristic for you. Ah, yes, I knew I was taking a risk doing that, but it was unavoidable. I am sorry it has to come to this, Cara, but if you'll excuse me, I have to finish up this transaction and get back to Virginia. I've been gone too long as it is. Malone joined the other men, who appeared of Arabian descent, and disappeared through another doorway, leaving her alone with Bruce. Cara closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done in a long time. She prayed.